Open source. What is this open source nonsense? Linux. Open source. AMD open source. What is this open source nonsense? Yeah. And now everybody's open source now. Nvidia, Intel, yeah. And even Microsoft. You're like, huh? Oh, by the way, hello viewers. Mornings. Another beautiful day. Hope your 5 senses work. Health and strength is good or excellent. Yeah. Alright, look. It says here the Windows Linux subsystem for Linux is now open source. Yeah. It says here today we're very excited to announce the open source release of Windows subsystem for Linux. This is the result of a multi-year effort to prepare for this and a great closure to the first ever issue raised on the Microsoft WSL repo. Will this be open source? Question mark. Issue. And then Microsoft/WSL. It says here, that means that the code that powers WSL is now available on GitHub at Microsoft/WSL. We'll leave those links. It says here, open source. And open source to the community, you can download WSL and build it from source, add new fixes and features, and participate in WSL activities. Says here, WSL component overview. WSL is made of a set of distribution component. Some run in Windows and some run inside the WSL2 virtual machine. Here's an overview of WSL architecture. Then it says WSL code can be broken up into these main areas. Command line executables that are the entry point to interact with WSL. WSL.exe, WSLconfig.exe, and WSLg.exe. Says the WSL service that starts the WSL, and then virtual VM, meaning virtual machine, starts distros, mount files across share, and more. And then WSL service.exe, and then Linux init and daemon processes binaries that run in Linux to provide WSL functionality. Init for startup and GNS for networking, local hosts for porting and forwarding, etc. Says file sharing Linux files to Windows with WSL plans server implementation plans 9. Says head over to the https wsl.dev. We'll leave the link. And then it says to learn more about each component. This comes as an addition to the already open source WSL component. They have some links, I will leave them. It says here, following the components are still part of the Windows image, are not open source at this time. And then you have lxcore.system, the kernel side driver that powers WSL1. And then it says p9rdr.system and p9np.dll, which runs the quotes /wsl.localhost file system redirection from Windows to Linux. Yeah. Welcome to the club, Microsoft. Anyway, it says here, why open source now? It says, why open source now? A bit of history. WSL first announced at Build back in 2016 and first shipped with the Windows 10th anniversary update. At that time, WSL was based on a Pico processor provider, lxcore.system, which enables Windows to natively run ELF executables and implement Linux system calls inside the Windows kernel. This eventually became what we today know as WSL.1. WSL in quotes is WSL and then one, space 1. It says here which WSL is which WSL still supports. It says here over time it became clear that the best way to provide optimal capabilities with native Linux was to rely on the Linux kernel itself. WSL2 was born and first announced in 2019. As the community behind WSL grew, WSL gained more features such as GPU support, graphical application support via WSLG, and support for System D. Says here, Eventually, it eventually became clear to keep up with the growing community and features requests, WSL had to move faster and ship separately from Windows. That's why in 2021 we separated WSL from the Windows code base and moved it to its own code base. This new WSL first shipped as version 0.47.1 to the Microsoft Store in July 2021. At the time, only Windows 11 was supported, and the package was marked as preview, only recommend to users that wanted to experience the latest and greatest of WSL. Says we continue to develop this new WSL package until it was ready for general availability. That happened November of 2022 with WSL 1.0.0, which added support for Windows 10 and was the first stable release of this new WSL. Says here, from there we kept on improving WSL with the objective of fully transitioning all users to this new WSL package and away from the WSL component that shipped with Windows. Windows 11 24H2 was the first Windows build that moved users from the built-in WSL to newer WSL package. We kept WSL.exe in the Windows image, so it could download the latest package on demand to make the transition easier. As we kept on improving WSL, we eventually hit another milestone, WSL 2.0.0. What are the three hardest problems in computer science? Off by one error and naming things. Says here, that part is in parentheses. Says here, WSL 2.0.0 introduced major improvement such as mirrored networking, DNS tunneling. DNS stands for domain name system or domain name server or service. Anyway, section 0 support, proxy support, firewall support, and more. And that's the milestone we're still building on today. At the time of writing this article, WSL 2.5.7 is the latest available version out of our 9-page of GitHub release. We'll leave that note. Since 0.47.1 .1 4 years ago. It says the community behind WSL. Another subtopic. It says here, over the years we've been incredibly lucky to have a strong community supporting WSL from day one. We've been blessed with people sharing their knowledge and spending countless hours to help track down bugs, find the best ways to implement new features, and improve WSL. WSL could never have been what it is today without its community. Even without access to WSL source code, people have been able to make major contribution that lead to what WSL is now. It says, this is why we're incredibly excited to open source WSL today. We've seen how much the community has contributed to WSL without access to the source code, and we can't wait to see how WSL will evolve now that the community, or they say evolve, they could have said grow, but anyway, because when they say evolve, they're obsessed with evolution. But anyway, it says here, now that the community can make direct code contribution to the project. And then it says, contributing to WSL. Are you interested in learning how WSL works? Would you like to see how a specific feature works or make a change? Head over to Microsoft/WSL to learn more. And that is that. So WSL, and it's now open source in the Windows subsystem. So yeah, the open source community is big, so people all over the world, like with different skill levels, skill sets, skill levels, contributed to it. So like the article said, they had to rely on they need a community to to keep it going. So yeah, so Microsoft, so Windows now is part of the the open source community. You know, if you remember, about a couple of years ago, I think about a year or two ago, you know, Microsoft was they were going to a Linux seminar, you know, to learn learn some things, and then you know, about a month ago now, you know, Microsoft is using Fedora Linux, you know, with Windows now. So and now this. So yeah, communication is big in today's world. You know, very big. So it get a lot of things done. You know, so social media has opened up the internet. Yeah. So yeah. Different ways of communicating, different ways of talking, and getting things done. So this open WSL, it will continue to get better and improved, and then carry on from there. There's a whole bunch of links here in this article though, so I will leave all of them in the description box so you can see for yourself. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this video for y'all to enjoy though. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, still Star Wars Sergeant Fan, or Dark Side. Go. Peace.